Welcome to the last. Oh, I should stand here. I'm standing here. All good. Welcome to the last session of the conference, and thank you very much for turning up. It's been very successful so far, and we are finishing off on a strong note. We've got some exciting research to present to you this afternoon. Sail Training International, in particular, is having a big focus on encouraging research and increasing our exposure to research, and we're very fortunate enough to have two exciting projects being presented to us this afternoon. So the first one is going to be presented by Rebecca Hind, who is an accredited practitioner of the Institute for Outdoor Learning, and she's a former senior instructor and is now the Education Account Executive at the Outward Bound Trust. Rebecca has worked on a number of sail training organisations and is particularly passionate about exploring the ways in which practice can be enhanced. So I'll let Rebecca introduce her study in a second and its implications. Montserrat Vives?
Sorry?
Montserrat Vives? Did I get
Pijoan.
Pijoan? Her involvement in sail training started in the summer of 2011, sailing with Constantina, Sherma, St Ives from the Shetland Islands to Denmark and Halmstad. And she's also sailed on many other vessels because of her studies. In 2013, she finished her master's dissertation in sail training as a transformative experience for young people from different countries. She is currently a full-time PhD student in advanced studies in anthropology at the University of Barcelona. Her research, sail training, transiting between community and institution, is now analysing the short and long-term outcomes in Spanish youth and their family context following their participation in tall ship races. And since 2015, she is the youth coordinator for Sail Training International with Barcelona.
Spain,
sorry. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So first I'd like to introduce Rebecca to the floor, and we will have two presentations with question time at the end. So we'd just like you to hold on to your questions until that time.
Fantastic, thank you. So good afternoon everyone, thanks ever so much for the Sail Training International for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope this is of some interest to you. I'm here to present some findings from a master's research project that I've been doing as part of a master's degree in outdoor education. And my studies have been supervised by Pete Allison, many of whom you'd know or have read about his work. So that's what we're up to. Fantastic. So, as Murray was saying, I've been a senior instructor at the Outward Bound Trust, and they're an educational charity based in the UK, and their mission is to unlock the potential of young people in wild environments. And that was a company that was set up by Kurt Hahn, who's very fond of experiential learning, so that was the ethos of the Outward Bound Trust and what I've been doing for the last 8 or so years. So the range of experiences that I've had a kind of led to an unwavering belief in the power and the impact of outdoor learning. And this has kind of sparked an interest for me to understand what it is about outdoor learning that's made it, that makes it so powerful and makes it so impactful as well. And that's led to my master's study. So, a little bit about research design then. Our current culture is fixated by value and quantification, so it's all about numbers, it's all about proving things with numbers, and what some people would describe as the age of evaluation. In education is no different, and in non-formal learning, that's learning that's practice-based and that is experiential, can be experiential in nature. It's kind of the antithesis of formal learning, learning in the classroom, learning very passively. Non-formal learning, research, impact studies or outcome-based studies are really prevalent. So that's fantastic because it recognises that programmes are successful. It means that we can say that programmes have a positive impact on skills, on attributes, on the behaviours of young people. This means that it helps to justify the programme's existence. It means that it secures funding, it attracts participants. So fantastic so far. It also permits staff to develop a faith in their work. Rather than just a belief that it works, it's actually proof that it works. So staff can understand that. However, research is fixated by the before and after, okay? So it's reductionist, it's simplistic, it focuses on numbers. Because of that, it ignores the interacting processes or what happens between the beginning and the outcomes. So it largely ignores what we term the educational black box just here, and that is what happens in the middle. What are the mechanisms that determine change? Because it ignores that, we have little more than a broad and unsubstantiated understanding of how programs work. Because we don't understand how programs work, they'll be delivered successfully, and we know that because the research proves that, but they're blind. They're hit and miss propositions, so we don't understand why they work. As a result, there's a call to illuminate and to understand what it is about these programs, or what the mechanisms that happen that determine change. And because of that, if we look at understanding these mechanisms, we can then improve provisioning, improve what we do, and improve the outcomes as well. So what I did is I designed a process study that's practically based of personal social development in the outdoors. And that study aimed to utilise my experience in outdoor learning and through Outward Bound and through all the other experiences that I've got in the outdoors, to utilise that experience to come up with this personal theory about how programs work, to identify what it is in the black box. The idea also was to understand, to do this in one context. So outdoor learning happens in a variety of different contexts, land-based, sea-based, etc. So I was going to do it in one context, and then with the idea that I could use that study to explain what happened in other contexts as well. So, rather than just saying I was going to look at personal social development in the outdoors, I wanted to focus in on what I was looking at. That meant that I could have really distinct conclusions, and it's obviously more valuable. So to start with, I looked at what is process, and back in the 1970s there was a study by Walsh and Gollins, and they looked at process components, and they found 4 main ones. So the learner is part of the process, the physical and social environment together, part of the process, problem-solving tasks, what we get the young people to do, and also this one that I was particularly interested in, the facilitator and their actions and behaviours. And as an educator myself, that was something that really got me interested. So, the next part, narrowing the focus, is all about narrowing what I was looking at. I also wanted to look at best practice. So I wanted to look at personalised learning. And personalised learning, for those of you who are familiar, is all associated with higher order comprehension and competency, so it's about deep learning. It's they also prioritised transferable learning process. For those of you that were in Murray and Rui's presentation yesterday, it's about the process, the learning cycle. So, narrowing again, I wanted to look at what the research setting was, and I chose sail training as part of that. Pete Allison and Chris von Wald came up with 3 different parts to sail training: skill acquisition, curriculum-based education, like the Class Afloat or High Seas High School, and also personal social development. I won't need to describe what sail training is to you, because we've got a room full of experts, but it was this personal social development side of things that I was going to focus in on. Also, I wanted to focus in on what young people get out of these personal social development programs and the age just there. Okay, so current sail training research is largely concerned with outcomes and impact. Generally, it's narrow, there's not much of it, and it's variable in quality, but it concludes that sail training is successful in its aims. So, what I set out to do was to review the literature that is existing, especially in personalised learning. And this one, the section in red there, the high quality teaching and learning, was the bit that really interested me. So what is it? High quality teaching and learning is deemed to have occurred when young people have developed in accordance with the outcomes that they set out to. So that's what I was looking at. And I basically, sensitising concepts, I looked at the research and I said, right, okay, this is what high quality teaching and learning is. And then I went into the environment. I wasn't all putting my feet up, by the way. And I went in and I went to understand what it is and to observe what it is that facilitators do to contribute towards learning. So my findings, I came up with 8 main findings associated with high quality teaching and learning. And each of these I could link with existing research, so brain research, about why those are important in the context of learning. So the first one, adopting a facilitative style and experiential approach. This started to get really complicated, so I ended up with lots of different parts that were all in this first category. Questioning, for example, by facilitators with questioning, they question young people and it wanted to kind of explain the understanding of what young people were doing by saying to them, okay, why did you do that, or what is the point of doing that? Young people will recall and they'll start to make links between prior knowledge and existing knowledge, and that's what increases learning. That's where the development occurs. So that's just an example there. Self-regulation and self-realisation, these are really difficult ones to achieve. They're the kind of ones that I found that were less easy to see, but this is about getting young people to be responsible, getting young people to voice what their preferences are, to choose so you could have like a flexible approach to delivery, so to choose what they wanted to do and why they wanted to do it. So the other one's creating social opportunity, so opportunities for young people to get together and spend time with each other. Promoting peer coaching, this is quite an interesting one as well. This is with the idea that young people learn better from each other. They learn a lot better because they can relate to people of the same age. They can relate to them better than they can relate to us as adults. So they can learn more because of that when they're around young people. So, for example, if you're teaching knots on a sail training vessel, and one person picks up how to tie a knot, and then you can say, okay, well, your role now is to teach other people. And so that kind of cements the learning as well. Fantastic. So that's my findings. The conclusions were that many features of high quality teaching and learning were found and were seen in lots of the different vessels that I worked on. I worked with 3 organisations in the UK, and all of the facilitators on board. I spent a week on board each vessel, 3 vessels. And I could see that there was some really great learning that happened, and that was in kind of relation to the research that I was looking at. So a wide range of strategies. Many of these can be linked with experiential and personalised learning or pedagogies. Whether the facilitators knew that or not, I'm not sure, and that would be an interesting kind of follow-up research to do, piece of research. So as a result, the findings were that I could see this high quality teaching and learning, and that meant that deep experiences were happening, deep support was happening, and the young people were therefore likely to be developing these lifelong and life-wide personal and social skills. But there's lots of room for improvement, and there was also lots of variation. There was very little consistency between the vessels. So where do we go from here? What I thought was really important was, rather than just saying, okay, this is what I found, this is what's important, I wanted to make some recommendations for providers, for facilitators, and for the industry in kind of general, so that people could benefit from my findings. So I had 3 different hats, or 3 different perspectives that I used. One was from the perspective of a facilitator, one from the organisational commercials perspective, and one from an industry perspective as well. This is all about becoming better, becoming bolder, and improving the provision and the outcomes that we have for young people. So, recommendations for facilitators. I recommend that facilitators look at my findings and then find out whether they're doing them or not. Okay, so considering how people use these kind of best practice strategies, and if not, if they don't use them, how they can then learn about using them. So I recommend that that facilitators themselves look to kind of looking at formal facilitation training in order to be able to improve what they do with young people. I also recommend that the kind of weakest patch of what I was looking at was to see that the actual experiential learning, the learning from experience, found that sail trainers as a whole, and this was on a really quite a small sample, shied away from letting the youngsters learn from their mistakes. And obviously there's a real kind of risk factor here, that we're preventing people from learning by their mistakes because we're looking after their safety, we're preventing them from getting hurt, getting harmed. But I think that there's some way of being able to rein that control back a little bit more and getting young people to experiment. And also to allow them to be more independent and responsible. And I think as facilitators we are quite controlling, and the risk is that we're preventing learning from happening as a result of that. So recommendations for organisations as a whole, we were doing a lot of these things already. So let's shout about it. Let's say that we are doing these things because this has been proved that we are. So market the approach more. I would imagine, I was talking to somebody earlier about experiential learning, and I would imagine that, and this is not meant with any disrespect, but I imagine that a lot of these things are quite new and the language is quite new to sail trainers, but it's about understanding that and sharing what we do, because we do these things already. It's very relevant in today's society and especially in education as well. So even though some of the research that we've had proves that sail training works, let's not rest on that. Let's start looking at improving what we're doing. So let's provide training opportunities for facilitators about the process, about the value of experiential learning. Let's also become a bit bolder. Let's experiment with what we're doing. Let's not just say, okay, well, we've always done it this way, so let's carry on. Let's experiment. Let's maybe rein back what we do a little bit more and let young people make those mistakes a little bit more. There's no reason to change, not to change what we're doing. Obviously, we've got to find the balance there. And let's use evaluation, and let's use external research and innovation more to kind of directly inform practice. Okay, recommendations to the industry. This is kind of for researchers, for academics, and potentially for organisations as well. Let's think about diversifying our approach to evaluation. Let's just let's not stop doing impact evaluation, because obviously I've kind of identified that there's some use in that. But let's think about the process. Let's think about understanding what we're doing, sharing that a little bit more as well. What's in that black box? What is sail training? What does it do? And let's also, so this is kind of a posh way of saying, let's understand what people do rather than what they say they think we do. So let's observe people rather than listen to what they say. So someone might say, okay, well, we do experiential learning. I'm not sure whether they would, but let's understand that a little bit better. So it's through observations, and the focus is about improving practice rather than proving it. And let's not forget why this is important. It's all about the young people. It's all about changing lives with the young people. That's it.
Okay. So,
yeah,
so
that was good.
Amazing.
we will save most of the questions until the second part of the presentation. And just while you're getting set up, I'll go and hand yours out.
Okay.
Are yours ready to?
Yeah. I can. Well. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be here as well. The aim of my research is to give feedback as well to the tall ships where the Spanish trainees have sailed these last tall ship races 2016, such as Morgenstern, Golden Loop, Tomidis, Santa Maria Manuela, and Lord Nelson. I want, with this presentation, which comes from in-depth interviews with the trainees and as well diagrams of kinship that they did before the experience, compared with the drawings they did after the experience, and about how they felt the relations in the ship. I did a comparison of these two drawings of the trainees from this that I will show you. From these two ways of methodology, I'm going to introduce you to my theoretical framework since from the point of view of anthropology. So, I must say that I will put this presentation on the website of Sail on Board, because here you have the feedback of the trainees and you can follow in the clouds what they had said. Okay? So, what this year new trainees said about the tall ships. They said, a tall ship is like a big house where nobody knows each other, and in the end, there comes a time when all end up connected because they have to work together, do everything side by side with each other. Everything is communal, like a form of brotherhood. Another, Eric said, I would say that it is like an anthill, everyone so close to each other and everyone playing their little part so that everything goes well. Edu said, it's a very strong term to call the people you know for a weak family, but when you are there, it's like that. So, my PhD hypothesis related to this unique experience focused on the personal development of the youth, because from the point of view on anthropology, my focus is in the personal development of the youngsters, is that the concept of self-training itself means becoming a member of a ship family. That is to say that on the ship there exists a kind of social relationships that create strong ties amongst the participants. These relationships could be called primordial in the same way as kinship relations, community relations, and ritual relations are. They are relationships in which everyone participates with one another. Kinship involves an internalization of the difference called mutuality of being. The relationships that occur on board are primordial relationships in which there is a mutual interaction. My analysis from the anthropology of kinship aims to show the ship as a family community, where every member of the ship family is at the same time like a relative, and every relative is in this sense a member of the ship family. Thus, the cultural construction of the family derives from two orders of the world: the order of nature and the order of law. What is the human part of nature is a very special part that has nothing to do with reason, nothing to do with cultural values. Snyder also says that to be a family, participants must live together. This kind of experience is a close encounter with strangers from different backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures, ages, to coexist the same space. The boat serves as a home where you have been invited to stay while it transports you. Therefore, the ship is like a kinship community where you stay, where you belong from harbor to harbor, where you are nurtured, and at the same time where someone is taking care of you while they ask you to do the same for others. If this argument about the family we look to the ship, with this argument about the family we look to the ship, we find that the ship is also a total institution, because of hierarchical positions, with a captain, officers and permanent crew with different roles and responsibilities, as well as safety regulations which would have been established by culture. In this order of law, the relationships become a code for conduct. But at the same time, as there are these regulations, there is the human aspect, because they live in a confined space, in the confined space of the ship, where everyone has to live in a community, where whatever happens and whatever you do, you will always be part of this ship family. In this other kind of order, the order of nature, the relationships become a natural substance. They are primordial relationships. That's why I call the subtitle of my research is called combining community and institution, because the concept of family have both parts. Okay. What the trainees have said about permanent crew, about these institutional positions. They said, at first I looked up to them, but then we got together and we became friends. You realize that they are human and you think, I could be this person within 10 years. Okay. I just want to draw your attention to the study by Checkering and Gameson about educational innovation at university, in which the first out of 7 principles of quality teaching is to encourage contact between professors and students. About the methodology I use, I did the analysis of relationships based on these diagrams of kinship, and I also did the in-depth interviews. And I would say that my research carries out a complete monitoring from the registration process to participation and evaluation of the experience, including interviews before and after the voyages. And this is a qualitative research comparing Spanish youngsters aged 15 to 18 with those over 18. What they said. I expect a lot more physical exercise, but all in all, it has been more mental, because on top of that, you have to do all these jobs. Then to have to be on watch, and more than being there all day pulling and releasing ropes, which we have done too, but more than that, all in all, has been, I don't know, taking notice of others, getting up very early and being there, paying attention. Since my previous analysis of cell training as a transformative experience for young people from different countries, I became the youth coordinator of Sti. In this capacity, I have been able to meet and get to know all the Spanish trainees and their families participating in the Tall Ship Races 2016. When it comes to telling a new trainee or a class of my students what cell training is, I always explain that it is something very special, born in the Northern European cultures, following the tradition of having the ship as a place for the whole family to meet. I have to explain this because this kind of experience is unknown in Spain. All the 37 trainees and their families participating in this study agreed that they had never heard of it before. Even though some of them say during the holidays or are studying nautical degrees, nobody had any idea what sail training was. Even those from the municipalities of Coruña who knew something about the tall ships because they had stopped off there in the past, they had noticed the commotion, but they had no idea that youngsters could participate in the sail training experience. Here, well, I did interviews to the minors' parents as well about what they thought about the experience, and well, I go further because it's more interesting to follow the presentation. What Susana said is that his son, because I asked for if they had another experience similar to the sail training experience, and she said he went on another international exchange, a skiing course for 2 weeks with young people from other countries. The fact is that you had to register a year before, and there were many meetings, many preparatory meetings to join it. I will compare that with the APB, the preparation weekend, advanced planning visit we have in the international exchange, and we did the one from the international exchange on Morgenstern this year in Barcelona. I think this planning increases the process they do with this kind of experience. So I will support that with what Bloom's taxonomy process runs from remembering through understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating to creating. This was the meeting in Barcelona. As well, I meet in the APB trainees from different ships and trainees who didn't participate this year but can be possible trainees in the future, in the meeting, in the presentation they share. The participants of this study are 37 trainees from different regions of Spain, 12 families, 6 friends of the trainees who didn't participate in the experience, and 2 youth coordinators, the ones from Cádiz and Coruña, took part in this study. In these 37, there are included some of the ones funded by the municipalities of Cádiz, Coruña and Magón, where the experience has been promoted this year. Getting on board. The first requirement is to adjust to get over seasick, and when this is achieved, one can start working together with others for the good of the group. I think this is the most important goal facing permanent crews dedicated to taking young people to sea. Then they can convey what their life is like at sea and send them away with lasting memories of their experience. As in any family, here are trainees. We always go to the beach, as we said this morning. So, as in any family, there are tensions and difficult situations that one must deal with. The fact is that you must be able to withstand what in a daily situation bothers you the most. The world, when you are at sea, is totally focused on the ship, environment, and its people. There is no outside. It is a break, young people say, when you can relax, an interval of everyday life in a hostile space where you have been invited to work. Getting on board means, from trainees' words, a change of pace, overcoming seasickness and solitude. That is what Camila, a friend of one of the trainees, said. I had talked with him on the phone just before setting sail. Once he left, he called me, overwhelmed, but really overwhelmed. But really, he felt out of place. He was crying, so right. It is like a totally different contrast. This is supposedly your family and everything has been set up to be like that. Edu says, you feel completely out of place and very far from your family and friends. Even if we had been in Barcelona, since the moment you get on board and say goodbye to your loved ones, you already have an incredible sense of solitude. You have been invited to become involved in. You start to take responsibility for tasks and their importance for the good of the group. Then there is no going back, because you are now an integral part of the ship and its crew. Again, I want to draw your attention to the study by McCarthy and Coetzee, comparing sail training and land-based youth development activities. This study questions whether there exist differences between sail training and another outdoor educational environments. The findings and discussion of my research go further in that way. One could also say that a ship with its own name is a complex entity and the participants are cogs within it. Therefore, I will go one step further and say the ship is a living organism. The analysis of the space of the ship, where I did the field work, took me from Foucault, who spoke about the ship as the heterotopic space per excellence, so that it is connected with many other places at the same moment, to Ingold, who spoke of living organisms as generators of lines or paths, not just places. Well, this is the concept. To understand Ingold more about what he calls a living organism, with this meshwork of lines, he means that a person, a living organism, which can be collective as the ship, is a kind of connection with a lot of more other living organisms. And he compares it with something like, he compares it with the relation with trees and fungi, just to let us to understand what he wants to mean. And he says that they have a kind of parental care, and they can connect roots in the soil as channels of communication between roots of different plants, supplying flow between them. So therefore, young plants and old plants can coexist in a common underground network that supports each of them in communion with each other as sources and reservoirs. As well, they can connect plants from the same species and the different species. So what appear to be separate bodies above ground are joined together below the ground. In the same way, the islands that seem to be separated above sea level are peaks of a submerged mountain range. Okay, and having said that, the ship also works as a living organism that opens multiple connections. Alex, the Spanish mentor, said, on the ship space, we are all united in the same goal, each one with a different entity, but with a thread that unites us. The boat, as an organism, somehow makes its crew interrelated, makes connections both by having them in a limited space and by being limited as a variable environment with an establishment of structured rhythm. Edu compared the traveling with the wheelchair, compared the feeling that the wheelchair is part of you with the ship's movement. He said, it takes time, but you integrate it as part of you on the same way. It gets you 3 days to get over the seasickness, and he compared that with the feeling that to integrate the wheelchair, going in a wheelchair. The boat has its own name and personality, always transformable for those who live and sail it. We can say that this identity requires the entire group to sail it, and that is never the product of individuality. Edu said, we started breaking waves, and somebody came and asked, who's at the wheel? When you slide through the water, you notice it a lot, but when you break wave, you notice it even more. In this respect, a tall ship becomes a dynamically lived space, a performance space which goes deeply into the discovery of new realities. The hypothesis then is that all social rhythm, collective rhythm, is determined by the types of partnerships which the human groups let themselves into. The ship transforms everything. The ship is a very particular space, closed in, where you become isolated at sea. It's like a house, a cabin, a container that welcomes you for a period of 15 days, in the case of my study. In this house, there is a structure, a way of working and watch systems in order to sail day and night, and chiefs are needed among the crew. This way, some take care of others while they are resting, or to put it another way, some may take a rest because others are taking care of them. All in all, a structured organization that involves mutual trust and presence, as everyone is necessary, participation of each one is required because everything must be done by the participation of the whole group. Learnings. We had Edu, who said, "It's like the guy who taught me to tie knots when he had less movement in his hands than me. Then it strikes you and you say to yourself, hey, he has less mobility in his hands, and even so, he's teaching me to do something with his hands. Maybe I could do more myself." He also said, "I also saw a 98-year-old woman climbing the mast to the platform above without any help, and others saying, I would even get halfway." Gabriel said, "At first it's like a burden, but then you like taking care of others." He was preoccupied. Well, he was worried because his life before sailing was sleeping, and he said, now it's like a continuum. The 2 weeks have been like all the time being very attentive. Eric said, "A sail-training ship, for me at least, it has meant a lot, because before this experience I was more relaxed, and now it has helped me to organize my time better." Alex said, "It connects you to other times in your life when you have had to take care of others. As a mentor, you feel the responsibility that this represents. This was an additional task." And Gabriel, "In 2 weeks, we are almost more friends than many people I have known all my life. I know people outside the ship, and I wouldn't give them any responsibility. I wouldn't give them any responsibility like the one I give my fellows here." Okay. This summer, I was able to follow the first experiences that young Spaniards participating in this program had. I relive the times I had sailed with them. Entry to a society, group, or nationality requires one to accept values, learn the craftsmanship following the proper channels, but also to open yourself up to a new way of doing things. The concept of Thomas from Lefebvre's rhythm analysis or training means that humans are able to do so. It is based on repetition. Diego said, "When you are working, it is more or less a semi-automatic job, so that while cleaning, you have the time to think about your stuff." Time plays an important role in this process, and appropriation of space is not understood without the influence of time, the rhythms of life. The arrival on the ship is a change of pace from what your everyday routine usually is. Rhythms involve repetitions, and they can be defined as moments and differences within repetition. The time provisionally known as appropriate is a moment when we forget time, in which time no longer exists. As Gabriel said, at first you did not know what day it is because it was like I've already slept twice with spaces in between. But this was because I was on watch, or has a day already gone by? This is a groundbreaking experience, transforming because there is a change in the primordial relationships, which echoes flashbulb memories like an impact on other ways of being and understanding reality, and often experienced as a personal revelation or inspiration, mostly for the youngsters, the ones from 15 to 18. So now it's the moment comparing minors' experience from those over 18. Inés said, "This experience invites you to think about yourself and disconnect from what you've been doing all year. Edu said, "It is this priceless time that this voyage offers you. This compared to the minors' opinions, they said, we feel right now that this is our personal paradise. It's like a sect. I did not know that such things exist. Well, the only thing that differentiates us from the others was the curfew." And Yago said, "I thought there were people on the boat who were older than me and who would be better than us, but no, I'm 15 years old and I think I have been worth more on board than many people older than me. On board, it was if we were all the same age. What matters is what you do. It was a very different situation on board, maybe one even more civilized than our current life." Gabriel said, "I have felt more of a person on the ship than in the world. In the world, you have the possibility to hide, but not on the boat." Gabriel said, "If someone asked me, I will not say that it was just a positive experience, but it was so complete that if I had just had good time, it wouldn't have been so rewarding. I have got rid of many fears. My limits are wider. I don't know how it has changed me, but it has changed me. It is not just sailing, it is much more. Sailing is just what you think you are going to do." Finally, I did also interviews to trainees' friends. Edu discussing with their friends about these people he called family. I asked about the difference between their friends, the habitual friends, and the people he met on board. And he said, in the sense of getting to know someone with their most intimate things, in that sense there is no difference. Then their friends were angry with him. And I said, "Will you put these people in your diagram of kinship?" And he said, "Distant, but yes." "What do you think about it?" And Edu's friend said, "Strange, very strange." Okay, so the analysis, the other part, there were the in-depth interviews, and the other part was the analysis of the relationships based on diagrams of kinship before their experience, compared with the relations the participant perceived once on board. There is the groups drawings and the individual drawings. In the groups drawing, the most representative aspect is that after the voyage, they represented some kind of hierarchical drawings with the captain on the top and different watch groups. These were the Menorca groups, they did something like that. These were the Coruña group, they did something quite the same. These were the Cádiz group, and they did something quite the same. I mean, the captain, like the institutional drawing. But when we go to the individual drawings, there are those who maintain the family structure drawing, but replace family names with the names of the ones that have been their mates in the boat experience. This is Alex. This is from Eric. I didn't ask to draw the kinship relations in the boat. I just asked them to draw the relations in the boat. This is from Edu, before and after. And another ones are the ones like the Yago ones, who did a large circle around participants or circular layers, which are different levels of participants. Or the ones from Alicia and Eric, this is before the experience, the kinship diagram, and this is the relations lived on board. They put the participant's name in a small boat and ties which put in relation to other participants. This is from Gabriel. And he did something similar. I mean, they did the drawings in a separate way. This is from Ines, the diagram of kinship. And after the sailing experience, she drew that. So she did this kind of one arm, a bifid arm with two hands holding a navigational chart. And I will end up with this drawing from Diego, who said, "We are all one thing." So most of the participants have thought of the ship as their family. When it comes to comparing the diagrams of kinship before joining the experience and the drawings of the relations within the ship, the results show not only that they repeat the family structure, just replacing the names of their families with those of their shipmates, but also they draw themselves as part of the ship, showing the ship as a living organism. And that's all. Thank you very much.